Hi, next up in learning WDL, we're going to look at a script that has a variable. So you can see in our hello script on line 12, we have $name, which is a variable. And you can see that this declared in the task in line 9 of type string. So the question is, how do we work with this? So as we're thinking about understanding WDL script variables, we're going to, of course, be using our script and our Cromwell jar utility. And we'll have run mode or server mode. In run mode, we'll be using our GCE VM, and we'll be using WAM tool a little bit differently here. And then we'll be working with Terra.bio workflows on GCP. So let's start with our VM. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use WAM tool to validate the script. And you can see it comes back successful. So the next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and try to just run it using Cromwell. And you can see that the workflow failed, and if we scroll up, you can see that hello input write greeting.name was not specified, which really shouldn't be surprising because we have defined the variable, but we haven't set it to a value. So the workflow says, I can't run because I don't know what the value is. So previously we're using WAM tool to validate WDL syntax. Another thing that WAM tool can do for you is if there is a variable defined in the script, WAM tool, as we'll see here, if we use the word inputs instead of validate, will generate the syntax that we need, and it's for a separate file. You can name the file anything you want, but typically it's called inputs.json. That inputs.json will allow us to assign the value to the variable. Now, if we just use it by default, it prints to the console, but if we use this command, it'll print to a file. Now we can nano on that file, and we can set this to whatever value we want. Now, when we're running our workflow, we need to specify this file for our input. I've cleared the screen so it's a little bit easier to see. Now when we run Cromwell with our input_task WDL file, we need to use the -- inputs flag and specify inputs.json. And now our workflow succeeded. And you can see that in this line here, succeeded. So the question now is, how do we work with this inputs.json file, which by the way can be named anything, but it's just commonly called inputs.json in Terra. Let's take a look. So I've already added this workflow using find a workflow as hello input. And you can see if we look at the script, it's the same script. So Terra conveniently has an input UI that allows us to assign in a number of different ways. And as we get started, we're just going to do it manually with a string here. And then we're going to go ahead and save it and run our analysis. Now, because we're working with a value that's a single string, it gets us started in working with the assignment of variable values. Of course, we're doing data pipelining. So working with variable assignments, not only for values such as string values, but more typically for input and output files or arrays of files, is well documented in the Terra documentation. So I will link these articles as well. So you can see that this discusses the scope of variable. We added a variable at the task level. You can also add variables at the workflow level. And that's really typical when you're working with values that are passed between tasks. Again, these are topics we'll get into as we continue to explore WDL scripting language. Another useful Terra article deals with the available data types that are in WDL, and so I'll link this article as well. It'll help you to understand when you're declaring variables how you can use the appropriate type. So coming back to our workflow, let's refresh it. And we'll go to the job manager. You can see if you pass your mouse over inputs, We can see the input value here in the UI. And now we can see that this task succeeded. Now, I scoped this first example to the task. I have an additional example in the Hello section that's scoped to the workflow, and I encourage you to take a look at that as well. Happy pipelining!